Jason had always believed his life would be ordinary. He lived in a small apartment on the edge of New Seattle, worked long hours at a data processing company, and spent his free time watching old movies or playing video games. But all that changed the moment the Intergalactic Exchange Program assigned him a new roommate. He never thought he would be sharing a home with an alien. Her name was Lyra, and from the moment he opened the door to meet her, he realized she was nothing like he had imagined. She was tall, elegant, and moved with a quiet grace that made him feel clumsy just standing beside her. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, like soft moonlight, and her eyes were deep, almost hypnotic, glowing in colors he couldn't even name. Jason swallowed hard, unsure whether to greet her with a simple hi or collapse in awe. "Hello, Jason," she said in a melodic voice that carried warmth and curiosity. "I am Lyra. I hope we can live in harmony." Jason nodded, barely able to find words. There was something about the way she looked at him, like she was studying every detail, not judgmentally, but with wonder. For a moment, he felt exposed, as if she could see everything about him, even the parts he tried to hide from the world. The first few days were strange. Jason kept to his routines, careful not to invade her space, and Lyra followed her own routines, often observing him silently while he worked, ate, or watched TV. He realized quickly that she wasn't like any person he had ever met. She didn't have the same rules about personal space, but she respected boundaries in ways he didn't fully understand yet. Her curiosity was constant, but gentle, almost cautious, as if she were afraid to frighten him. At night, Jason would lie in bed listening to the soft hum of her alien devices. Sometimes he would catch her looking at him from across the room, not in a way that made him uncomfortable, but in a way that made him feel seen. Fully seen. It was a strange, exhilarating feeling. Lyra seemed fascinated by everything about him, the way he spoke, the way he laughed, even the way he tripped over his own feet. She asked questions about his species, his emotions, his habits, and he answered, awkwardly at first, but eventually with honesty. He realized she didn't see him as normal or weird. She saw him as something extraordinary. One evening, after a long day at work, Jason came home exhausted. He had planned to take a quick shower and make dinner before Lyra returned. He didn't hear her come in, and he didn't think anyone would be home. He shrugged out of his shirt and stepped into the bathroom, humming to himself. That's when he heard it, a soft click of the door, and then the sound of quiet footsteps. Before he could react, Lyra appeared in the doorway. Her eyes widened, not in shock, but in fascination. Jason froze, a towel clutched in his hands, heart hammering. For a moment, all the air in the room seemed to disappear. He expected anger, embarrassment, maybe even disgust, but what he saw instead was a calm, gentle curiosity. "You are fascinating," she said softly. That single phrase made Jason's face burn hotter than the sun. Fascinating? He had never felt so exposed, and yet strangely appreciated. She wasn't judging him. She was seeing him, all of him, in a way no human had ever done. That night, as he lay in bed, Jason's thoughts spun. He realized his life had just changed. He was no longer living alone. He was no longer invisible. And for the first time, he felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. Fear of being truly seen, and excitement at the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he was more than ordinary. Jason didn't yet know what living with Lyra would mean. But one thing was clear. His life, as mundane as it had seemed, was about to become extraordinary. Life with Lyra was already strange, but Jason thought he had adjusted to it. He had grown, used to her glowing presence, her quiet observation, and her endless questions about human life. Still, he never imagined he would face a moment so vulnerable it made his heart race like never before. It happened on an ordinary evening. Jason had returned from work later than usual, tired and hungry. He tossed his bag onto the sofa and headed straight for the bathroom. The warm shower promised a small escape from the stress of the day. He was alone, or so he thought. As he stepped out of the bathroom, dripping wet and wrapped in a towel, Jason didn't hear the soft, almost soundless step behind him. Lyra was standing there before he could react, her eyes wide, shimmering in the dim light. Jason froze. The towel in his hand felt suddenly too thin, too fragile, too inadequate to cover him. His face burned, his heart pounded, and he felt every second stretch into an eternity. He expected shock, embarrassment, or worse, judgment. Humans would have turned away, laughed nervously, or blushed uncontrollably. But Lyra, she did none of those things. She simply tilted her head, her luminous eyes focused on him, not in a way that made him feel exposed, but in a way that made him feel noticed. "You are "Fascinating," she said softly, her voice calm and even. Jason's stomach dropped. Fascinating? That wasn't the reaction he had anticipated. His cheeks flamed, and he opened his mouth, unsure what to say. I didn't," Lyra interrupted, lifting a hand gently. "Do not worry. I do not judge." Jason blinked, confused. The words were strange, unfamiliar, but oddly comforting. No one had ever looked at him this way, not a friend, not a family member, not even a lover. Lyra wasn't seeing his body. She was seeing him. Every flaw, every insecurity, every nervous twitch he hated, she observed them with curiosity and wonder. He swallowed hard. But it's awkward." Lyra smiled faintly, and the soft glow of her skin seemed to warm the room. "Awkward is human. It is beautiful. You are not perfect, Jason. That is why you are fascinating." Her words washed over him like a wave. Suddenly, all the embarrassment, all the shame, seemed less important. In that moment, he realized something profound. Vulnerability was not weakness. Being seen fully, without shame, could be powerful. From that onward, things changed. Jason began noticing small ways. Lyra respected his space and encouraged his confidence. She never forced him into conversation, never laughed at his mistakes, never mocked his nervousness. Instead, she watched, listened, and learned. Just as he slowly learned about her, she shared her own alien quirks, stories of her world, and details of her life that no human could even imagine. Jason listened, fascinated, feeling a growing bond forming between them. He realized that Lyra wasn't just a roommate. She was someone who could see him completely, and still value him. Even in ordinary moments, her presence became a source of comfort. Cooking dinner together, laughing at small mistakes, sharing quiet conversations at night, each act deepened the trust between them. Jason began to feel brave in ways he never had. He no longer feared being vulnerable around her. Instead, he felt honored to be seen, and every time he caught her looking at him with that soft, curious gaze, Jason remembered the night she saw him bare, not just physically, but emotionally, and reacted in a way no human ever had. Fascination, wonder, and respect had replaced fear, embarrassment, and shame. That moment, he realized, was the beginning of something extraordinary, something that would change his life in ways he could not yet imagine. Lyra had opened his eyes to a new understanding of himself, of humanity, and of the bonds that could exist even between two beings from entirely different worlds. And Jason, for the first time, felt something he had never felt before: hope. The days that followed were unlike anything Jason had ever experienced. Life with Lyra became a delicate dance of curiosity and understanding. She never pressured him, never pushed him to share more than he wanted, yet her presence made him open up in ways he hadn't expected. Her fascination with humanity wasn't just casual, she studied it like a scientist. Yet with a heart that was soft and warm, Jason began noticing small things. How Lyra's eyes lingered when he laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine interest. How she tilted her head when he spoke, absorbing every word like it was precious knowledge. She asked questions about emotions he barely understood himself. Why do humans blush? She once asked quietly, almost to herself, as Jason scratched his neck nervously. And why does it feel like a storm inside when you are embarrassed? He had no clear answer, but the fact that she wanted to understand so deeply made him feel remarkable. For the first time, he realized his awkwardness, his insecurities. His human flaws were not weaknesses. They were windows into what made him alive, what made him real. One evening, Jason sat at the kitchen table, sorting through some old photographs from childhood. Lyra hovered nearby, her glowing skin softly illuminating the room. He held up a picture of himself, a little boy with messy hair and a crooked smile. "I used to be so embarrassed of this," he said, almost whispering. Lyra leaned closer, studying the image with quiet fascination. "You are adorable," she said simply. "Your flaws, your growth, it is beautiful. You are learning. That is what humans do. That is why you are extraordinary." Jason's chest tightened. No one had ever said something like that to him. To hear it from someone who came from a world so different, who had no reason to praise him, made his heart swell. He felt seen in a way that transcended words, a way that made him feel alive, valued, and understood. Their evenings began to take on a comforting rhythm. Jason would cook while Lyra watched, asking questions about the flavors, the textures, and the small human rituals that accompanied a meal. He began to notice how she mirrored human expressions in her own alien way, her eyes widening when something surprised her, her mouth curving faintly when amused. It was during these moments that Jason learned the most profound lesson. Vulnerability could be strength. He saw it in himself and in her. She shared stories of her species, of their struggles and triumphs, of the ways they expressed love and trust. He listened, enraptured, realizing that every being, human or alien, had fears, hopes, and dreams. And when they allowed themselves to be seen fully, they became stronger, more alive. One rainy night, they sat together on the balcony, watching the city lights blur under the downpour. Jason shivered, wrapped in a blanket, and Lyra extended a hand. It wasn't romantic, not exactly, but it was intimate in a way that spoke of trust and connection. When their fingers brushed, Jason felt a warmth spread through him, not from touch alone, but from the understanding that someone could see him, truly see him. Without judgment. "You are brave," she said softly, her eyes glowing against the dark sky. "Bravery is not always about battle or struggle. Sometimes it is about letting others see you fully. That is human. That is remarkable." Jason smiled, feeling a strange mix of humility and pride. For the first time, he believed it. He was human, yes, awkward, flawed, uncertain, but he was remarkable. And Lyra's eyes, full of wonder and respect, reflected that truth back to him. From that moment, Jason began to embrace himself fully. He laughed louder, spoke more freely, and allowed himself to be vulnerable in ways he never had before. Lyra's presence became a mirror that reflected not his shame, but his strength. And for the first time in his life, he felt a rising confidence that came not from accomplishment or skill, but from simply being seen and accepted as he was. It was a small awakening, but one that would shape everything to come. Jason realized that being human was not a limitation, it was a gift. And in Lyra's eyes, he saw the proof. As the days turned into weeks, Jason felt a strange but comforting rhythm in their shared apartment. Living with Lyra was no longer just strange or exciting, it had become essential to his life. He noticed the small ways she respected him, ways he hadn't experienced with anyone else. She never barged in uninvited, yet she always seemed present, attentive, and aware of his moods. One evening, Jason returned home with a heavy heart. Work had been exhausting, and he felt the weight of loneliness pressing on him. Lyra was already in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the floor, reading a device that glowed softly in her hands. When she looked up, her eyes met his, calm and reassuring, and Jason felt a flicker of warmth spread through him. "Long day?" she asked in her soft, melodic voice. There was no judgment, no impatience, just genuine concern. He sighed and slumped onto the sofa. "Yeah, it's been rough," he muttered. "Sometimes I feel like I can't do anything right." Lyra tilted her head, as if considering his words carefully. "Humans have limits," she said quietly. "Even when you feel weak, you continue. That is strength. That is remarkable." Her words made him pause. No one had ever told him that his persistence, even when imperfect, was admirable. Usually people noticed mistakes or weakness, not the quiet courage it took to keep going. Jason's chest swelled with an unexpected pride. Over time, Jason realized something profound. Lyra's presence allowed him to be himself completely. He could leave the door open without fear of intrusion, laugh at his own clumsiness, and share thoughts he had never voiced aloud. He began to share more about himself, his fears, memories, and even his dreams. Lyra listened without judgment, offering insights that were gentle and thought-provoking. One night, while cooking together, Jason accidentally dropped a pot, and it clattered loudly on the counter. He froze, expecting annoyance or criticism. Instead, Lyra simply laughed, a light musical sound that made the tension in the room vanish, and said, "You are human. Mistakes are part of your nature. That is what makes you fascinating." Jason blinked. Fascinating. He remembered that word from the night she had seen him in the bathroom, and now it felt like a lifeline. Every flaw, every slip, every awkward moment was no longer something to hide. With Lyra, it was something to embrace, even celebrate. The trust between them grew silently, almost imperceptibly, but undeniably. Jason found himself leaving small things out in the open: books, clothes, notes, things he would have once hidden. And Lyra treated them with the same gentle curiosity she treated him, with respect and appreciation. One quiet night, they sat together on the balcony, watching the stars flicker against the city lights. Jason felt a strange calm settle over him. "Lyra," he said hesitantly, I don't know how to explain it, but I feel safe around you. I've never felt like this before." She reached out, her hand brushing lightly against his. "Safe is the beginning of trust," she said softly. "Trust allows you to grow. Trust allows you to rise. That is the human way." "You are learning well, Jason." Her words filled him with warmth. It wasn't just safety. It was connection, understanding, and acceptance. For the first time in years, Jason felt fully seen, not for what he could do, or how he looked, but for who he was inside, that night. As he lay in bed, he realized that life with Lyra was no longer just about curiosity or fascination. It was about trust, about learning from each other, about being human in a world that often demanded perfection. And in her presence, Jason found something extraordinary, the courage to embrace himself, fully and without fear. For the first time, he understood that being human wasn't a limitation, it was a power. And with Lyra, he was beginning to rise. The bond between Jason and Lyra had grown in ways neither of them had expected. Living together had become more than convenience. It was a quiet journey of discovery, trust, and understanding. Jason often found himself marveling at her presence, her calm curiosity, and the way she seemed to notice the small details about life that humans often overlooked. One evening, they sat on the balcony, the city lights reflecting like scattered stars on the wet streets below. Rain had just stopped, leaving a gentle coolness in the air. Jason wrapped his arms around his knees, looking at the distant horizon, feeling both small and alive at the same time. Lyra joined him, sitting close but without crowding. "You are thoughtful," she said softly, her eyes glowing faintly in the twilight. "Humans are so fragile, yet you carry so much inside. It is remarkable." Jason smiled faintly, feeling warmth spread through him. "I don't always feel remarkable," he admitted. "Most of the time I feel ordinary, small, weak." Lyra shook her head. "Ordinary is a human label. Weak is a human judgment. But I see the truth. You feel, you endure, you care. That is not weakness. That is courage. That is beauty." Her words were like a soft melody that touched something deep within him. For the first time, Jason truly understood that being human meant more than physical strength or achievements. It meant resilience, emotion, and connection. He felt proud of what he was, not in a boastful way, but quietly, deeply. Over the next few days, Jason noticed the subtle ways Lyra mirrored his own behaviors and emotions. When he laughed, she laughed softly with him, sometimes mimicking the small quirks of his expressions, as if learning the language of joy. When he spoke about his fears, she listened with patience, her glowing eyes reflecting understanding rather than judgment. One night, Jason shared a memory from his childhood. He spoke about a small garden behind his old house, where he would spend hours trying to grow flowers, failing repeatedly. "I always thought I was bad at it," he said, a little embarrassed. "Everything I tried just failed." Lyra reached out and placed a hand gently on his arm. "Failure is the soil of growth," she said. "Every attempt, every mistake, teaches you. Humans do not see this, but I do. You are patient, you are persistent, you are alive. That is what matters." Jason felt a lump in his throat. He had never had anyone speak to him like this, someone who truly valued his effort, his vulnerability, his humanity. He realized that Lyra's fascination with humans wasn't just curiosity, it was respect. Deep, unwavering respect. The next morning, Jason woke early, watching her sleep on the couch bathed in soft morning light. He felt a quiet gratitude for her presence, for the trust they shared. He had come to understand that connection wasn't about grand gestures, it was about moments like this, small and intimate, where silence itself spoke volumes. Tea later, as they prepared breakfast together, Jason accidentally spilled some juice on the counter. He laughed nervously, expecting frustration, but Lyra just shook her head and smiled. "You are human," she said lightly. "Messes are part of your nature. That is why life with you is never boring." Jason laughed, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. He realized he no longer needed to hide his flaws or pretend to be someone else. Lyra's presence had given him something he had never felt before, acceptance without condition. By the end of the day, Jason understood something profound. Being human was not a weakness. Vulnerability was not a flaw. And connection, true connection, was not about perfection, but about being fully seen and fully valued. Lyra had shown him that, in the quiet ways she lived and observed, humans could rise. Not through power or force, but through courage, emotion, and heart. And Jason, for the first time, felt that rising within himself. Days passed, and life with Lyra became a quiet symphony of shared moments and growing understanding. Jason felt something shifting inside him, a confidence, a self-awareness, and a courage he had never known. Her presence was no longer just comforting. It was transformative. One afternoon, they were in the small living room, surrounded by books and devices, sunlight spilling through the windows. Jason had been struggling with a personal project at work, frustrated and ready to give up. Lyra noticed his tension immediately. "You doubt yourself," she said softly, tilting her head. "Why do humans abandon themselves so easily? You are capable, Jason. You are not your failures." Her words struck him. He had always measured himself by mistakes, by shortcomings, by moments of weakness. But Lyra's perspective was different. She saw the effort, the persistence, the courage that hid behind every human flaw. Slowly, he felt a spark ignite a belief in himself he hadn't known he possessed. Jason returned to his project with renewed determination. Lyra stayed nearby, observing quietly, her eyes filled with warmth and encouragement. It was strange to feel her confidence in him more than his own, yet it was exactly what he needed. Step by step, he began to solve the problems, each small success bolstering his spirit. That evening, they sat together on the balcony, watching the twin moons rise over New Seattle. The sky was calm, the air cool and fragrant. Jason exhaled deeply, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "You have changed," Lyra said softly, almost like a whisper. "You are stronger than before. Not because of your skills, but because of your heart. Humans rise, even when they are afraid. That is your greatest power." Jason looked at her, a mixture of awe and gratitude filling his chest. For so long, he had underestimated himself. But through her eyes he could see what he truly was, resilient, emotional, and alive. Her admiration was not for appearances or success, but for his essence, his humanity. In the days that followed, Jason noticed subtle shifts in his behavior. He laughed more freely, spoke more openly, and embraced challenges he would have once avoided. Even the little things, tripping over his own feet, spilling a drink. Forgetting a task felt lighter because Lyra had taught him that imperfection was part of being alive. One night, as they prepared dinner together, Jason felt a sudden surge of courage. He placed his hand gently over hers as she guided him through chopping vegetables. The gesture was simple, yet intimate, a silent acknowledgement of trust and connection. Lyra's eyes glimmered softly in response, her alien glow reflecting the warmth he felt inside. "You have risen, Jason," she said quietly. "Not through power, not through force, but through being human. That is extraordinary." Her words resonated deep within him. For the first time, he felt a true sense of pride, not pride in achievement, but pride in simply being who he was. He realized that his fears, his mistakes, and his vulnerabilities were not obstacles, they were stepping stones to growth. Later, lying in bed, Jason reflected on everything he had learned from Lyra. She had shown him that humanity was not a limitation. It was a gift. To feel deeply, to be vulnerable, to persevere in the face of uncertainty, these were strengths that could not be measured, only experienced. And as he drifted into sleep, he felt a quiet power within himself, a rising confidence that came from knowing he was truly seen, valued, and respected. Lyra had helped him discover it, but it was his own. He was human, yes, but now he knew that being human was remarkable. And for the first time, he was ready to embrace it fully, without fear, without shame, and without hesitation. Jason woke that morning with a sense of calm he had never felt before. Living with Lyra had transformed him in ways he couldn't have imagined. He no longer saw himself as weak, clumsy, or ordinary. He was human, and in that, he had discovered an extraordinary strength. The apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of Lyra's devices. She was sitting on the balcony, watching the city wake beneath the rising sun. Jason joined her, leaning lightly against the railing. For a moment, they simply observed the world in silence, sharing an unspoken connection that words could never fully capture. "You have grown," Lyra said softly, her eyes glimmering like twin stars. "Not through power or force, but through your heart. That is what it means to be human. That is why humans rise." Jason felt warmth spread through his chest. Her words weren't just praise, they were recognition of the journey he had taken. Every moment of self-doubt, every misstep, every awkward failure had led him here, to a place where he could see his own worth clearly. He turned to her, meeting her gaze, and realized something profound. Lyra had not only been his roommate, but his guide, his mirror, and his companion. She had taught him to embrace his vulnerability, to see it as a source of power rather than shame. In return, he had shared his humanity with her, his fears, his laughter, and his heart, and she had accepted it without question. "I used to be afraid," Jason admitted quietly. "Afraid of being seen, of being judged, of being human. But you showed me that it's not something to hide." that it's something to rise with. Lyra reached out and gently touched his hand. The contact was soft, electric even, yet comforting. "You are remarkable," she said. "Your courage is in your openness. Your strength is in your vulnerability. You have shown me what it means to live fully." Jason smiled, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He realized that he didn't need to compare himself to anyone else, human or alien. He didn't need to hide his flaws or pretend to be perfect. He simply needed to embrace who he was. And that alone made him extraordinary. As the day passed, they shared ordinary moments that now felt extraordinary, cooking meals together, laughing at little accidents, and simply being near each other. Every glance, every word, every silence carried weight and meaning. Jason understood that connection wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic revelations. It was in the steady, quiet presence of someone who truly saw you. Evenings became a time for reflection. Jason often found himself watching Lyra as she studied the stars or read quietly, her alien glow soft against the night. He felt a deep respect and affection for her, not romantic, but profound. She had expanded his world, made him see the beauty in being human, and shown him that true strength came from heart and spirit. One night, as they sat side by side on the balcony, Jason realized something he had never felt before: complete acceptance. He could be human, awkward, emotional, vulnerable, and she would still see him as extraordinary. That knowledge filled him with a quiet joy, a sense of rising above fear and doubt. "You have taught me," he said softly, "that being human is a power. That our emotions, our flaws, our courage, it's what makes us alive. And that's something no one alien or human can ever take away." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with a gentle light. "And I am honored," she said, "to witness it. To witness you rise." In that moment, Jason felt complete. Not because of achievements or strength, but because of trust, connection, and understanding. He had faced vulnerability, embraced it, and in doing so, had discovered the extraordinary within the ordinary. He was human. He was alive. And he was rising higher than he had ever imagined.